튜머학에 연구를 해서 노벨상을 수상하셨던 엘리자베스 블랙번 박사를 이 시간에 초대해서 스트레스와 텔로미어에 관한 이야기를 좀 더 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Because it turns out that as we humans age, our telomeres do shorten. And remarkably, that shortening is aging us. Generally speaking, the longer your telomeres, the better off you are. It's the over-shortening of telomeres that leads us to feel and see signs of aging. My skin cells start to die, and I start to see fine lines, wrinkles. Hair pigment cells die. You start to see grey. Immune system cells die. You increase your risks of getting sick. In fact, the cumulative research from the last 20 years has made clear that telomere attrition is contributing to our risks of getting cardiovascular diseases, Alzheimer's, some cancers, diabetes, the very conditions many of us die of. And so we have to think about this. What is going on? This attrition, we look and we feel older. Yeah, our telomeres are losing the war of attrition faster. In those of us who feel youthful longer, it turns out our telomeres are staying longer for longer periods of time, extending our feelings of youthfulness and reducing the risks of all we most dread as the birthdays go by. Okay, seems like a no-brainer. Now, if my telomeres are connected to how quickly I'm going to feel and get old, if my telomeres can be renewed by my telomerase, then all I have to do to reverse the signs and symptoms of aging is figure out where to buy that Costco-sized bottle of grade A, all-organic, fair trade telomerase, right? Great, problem solved. Not so fast. I'm sorry. Alas, that's not the case. Okay. And why? It's because human genetics has taught us that when it comes to our telomerase, we humans live on a knife edge. Okay, simply put, yes, nudging up telomerase does decrease the risks of some diseases, but it also increases the risks of certain rather nasty cancers. So even if you could buy that Costco-sized bottle of telomerase, and there are many websites with marketing such dubious products. Problem is, you could nudge up your risks of cancers. And we don't want that. Now, don't worry. And because, well, I think it's kind of funny that right now, many of us may be thinking, well, I'd rather be like pond scum. No. There is something for us humans in the story of telomeres and their maintenance. But I want to get one thing clear. It isn't about enormously extending human lifespan or immortality. It's about health span. Now, health span is the number of years of your life when you're free of disease, you're healthy, you're productive, you're zestfully enjoying life. Disease span, the opposite of health span, is the time of your life spent feeling old and sick and dying. So the real question becomes, okay, if I can't guzzle telomerase, do I have control over my telomeres length and hence my well-being, my health, without those downsides of cancer risks? Okay? So it's the year 2000. Now, I've been minutely scrutinizing little teeny tiny telomeres very happily for many years when into my lab walks a psychologist named Alyssa Epple. Now, Alyssa's expertise is in the effects of severe chronic psychological stress on our minds and our body's health. And as she was standing in my lab, which ironically overlooked the entrance to a mortuary, and and she had a life and death question for me. What happens to telomeres in people who are chronically stressed? She asked me. You see, she'd been studying caregivers, and specifically mothers of children with a chronic condition, be it gut disorder, be it autism, you name it. A group obviously under enormous and prolonged psychological stress. I have to say, her question changed me profoundly. See, all this time I'd been thinking of telomeres as those minuscule molecular structures that they are and the genes that control telomeres. And when Alyssa asked me about studying caregivers, I suddenly saw telomeres in a whole new light. I saw beyond the genes and the chromosomes into the lives of the real people we were studying. And I'm a mom myself, and at that moment I was struck by the image of these women dealing with their child with a condition very difficult to deal with, often without help. And such women simply often look worn down. So was it possible their telomeres were worn down as well? So our collective curiosity went into overdrive. Now, this is selected for our first study, a group of such caregiving mothers, and we wanted to ask, what's the length of their telomeres compared with the number of years that they have been caregiving for their child with a chronic condition? So 4 years go by, and the day comes when all the results are in. And Alyssa looked down at our first scatter plot and literally gasped, because there was a pattern to the data. And it was the exact gradient that we most feared might exist. It was right there on the page. The longer, the more years, that is, the mother had been in this caregiving situation, no matter her age, the shorter were her telomeres. And the more she perceived her situation as being more stressful, the lower was her telomerase and the shorter were her telomeres. So we have discovered something unheard of. The more chronic stress you're under, the shorter your telomeres, meaning the more likely you were to fall victim to an early disease span and perhaps untimely death. Our findings meant that people's life events and the way we respond to these events can change how you maintain your telomeres. So telomere length wasn't just a matter of age counted in years. Alyssa's question to me back when she first came to my lab indeed had been a life and death question. Now luckily, hidden in that data, there was hope. We noticed that some mothers, despite having been caring for their children for many years, had been able to maintain their telomeres. So studying these women closely revealed that they were resilient to stress. Somehow they were able to experience their circumstances not as a threat day in and day out, but as a challenge. And this has led to a very important insight for all of us. We have control over the way we age, all the way down into our cells. Okay, now our initial curiosity became infectious. Thousands of scientists from different fields added their expertise to telomere research, and the findings have poured in. It's up to over 10,000 scientific papers and counting. So several studies rapidly confirmed our initial finding that yes, chronic stress is bad for telomeres. And now many are revealing that we have more control over this particular aging process than any of us could ever have imagined. A few examples. A study from the University of California, Los Angeles, of people who are caring for a relative with dementia long term, and looked at their caregivers' telomere maintenance capacity and found that it was improved by them practicing a form of meditation for as little as 12 minutes a day for 2 months. Attitude matters. If you're habitually a negative thinker, you typically see a stressful situation with a threat stress response, meaning if your boss wants to see you, you automatically think, I'm about to be fired, and your blood vessels constrict, and your level of the stress hormone, cortisol, creeps up, and then it stays up. And over time, that actually damps down your telomerase, not good for your telomeres. On the other hand, if you typically see something stressful as a challenge to be tackled, then blood flows to your heart and to your brain, and you experience a brief but energizing spike of cortisol. And thanks to that habitual bring it on attitude, your telomeres do just fine. So, what is all of this telling us? Your telomeres do just fine. You really do have power to change what is happening to your own telomeres. But our curiosity just got more and more intense because we started to wonder, what about factors outside our own skin? Could they impact our telomere maintenance as well? You know, we humans are intensely social beings. Is it even possible that our telomeres were social as well? And the results have been startling. As early as childhood, emotional neglect, exposure to violence, bullying, and racism all impact telomeres, and the effects are long-term. Can you imagine the impact on children of living years in a war zone? People who can't trust their neighbors and who don't feel safe in their neighborhoods consistently have shorter telomeres. So your home address matters for telomeres as well. On the flip side, tight-knit communities, being in a marriage long-term, and lifelong friendships even, all improve telomere maintenance. So what is all this telling us? It's telling us that I have the power to impact my own telomeres, and I also have the power to impact yours. Telomere science has told us just how interconnected we all are.
지금까지 살펴본 것처럼 텔로미어의 단축은 노화, 질병, 조기 사망의 예후 지표입니다. 포괄적인 라이프스타일 변화가 텔로미어 기와 텔로머라즈 활성을 변화시킨다는 것이 확인되었습니다. 텔로미어 길이에는 영양, 심리적 스트레스, 운동, 또 기타 건강 관련 행동 같은 비유전적인 요인들이 영향을 미칩니다. 앞에서도 확인하신 것처럼 심하거나 만성적인 심리적 스트레스는 생물학적인 노화를 가속화하죠. 그러면 스트레스를 관리하는 기술은 텔로미어 길이를 유지하는 데 도움이 될까요? 그렇습니다. 스트레스 관리 기술은 텔로미어 유지 능력 증가와 관련이 있습니다. 2012년에 발표됐던 한 연구에서는 3개월간의 명상 뒤에 텔로머라즈가 유의하게 증가한 것으로 보고되기도 했었습니다. 또 자궁경부암에서 생존한 사람들의 스트레스를 감소시켜주기 위한 전화 상담에 관한 연구에서는 이 환자들이 느낀 스트레스와 텔로미어 길이 사이에 장기적인 연관성을 보여주기도 했죠. 그러니까 13주 차에 스트레스 관리와 라이프 스타일에 대해서 공부하실 때도 오늘처럼 열심히 공부하시기 바랍니다. 이번 주에도 정말 알차게 많은 내용을 공부했습니다. 한 주일 잘 보내시고 5주차 수업에서 뵙겠습니다.